Welcome back to another episode of AMS Spotlight, where we sit down with some of the top professionals in the mortgage and real estate world to talk strategy, relationship, and what's really happening in today's market. Today, I'm joined by Jeff from Logan Finance. We're going to be diving deep into what separates lenders in today's market, what successful brokers are doing differently now, and why strong lending relationships matter more than ever in an environment that continues to shift almost weekly. Jeff, appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into the mortgage industry? What's your history?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, it's been a while now. I got into the business, I think, about 2002, right out of college. Started originating for a little while, and then a wholesale opportunity popped up with the company Ameriquest Wholesale. So I jumped on that, got right into wholesale, literally months out of college. Now, I've been in the business 25 years, about approximating. So of that time, a majority of it's been in the wholesale world. There's been some years that I did originate on the retail side as well. Listen, I was going to college. I wasn't going to college saying, "Hey, I wanted to get into wholesale mortgages and subprime mortgages." I honestly probably had no idea of the business at that point, and just kind of fell into it right out of college. I had a brother that was in the mortgage business that had a lot to do, kind of swayed me a little bit. He was doing quite well at the time. I hate to say it, but it's probably the money was enticing. That's really, I think, what got him and me both motivated in this space. And but we learned that there's ups and downs pretty quickly after that. But that's really how I landed here, Joe. It was a little bit by accident, enticing about the money aspect, but grew to love it because it's just like a non-traditional job with the way I've dealt with it mostly in wholesale. Whereas, you're kind of like self-employed, but you're interacting with a lot of other small businesses and large businesses throughout your region. I'm seeing brokers, bankers throughout my region, getting a taste of flavor, seeing how everybody's companies operate, sitting down with business owners and employees alike and learning how to work with them and keeping our organizations working together. But
Right.
but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, that's really how I fell into this.
So, you got in 2002. So, you talked about ups and downs. You've seen some considerable ups and downs. Can you tell me what
Yeah.
2008 was like for you? And then post COVID, what it's been like for you? Was there any pivots that you had to do?
Yeah, so when I walked into the business, I mean, we were in like an up, like that was the subprime boom. And then 2008, as you mentioned, that was really the subprime credit crisis. So, whereas I walked into the business where times were pretty easy, and that's how I learned, just that downside was far more dramatic than we could have ever imagined. Many people, maybe some older peers in the business, always told us, as being younger guys in the business, that there would be ups and downs and you got to be prepared for the downs. But I think the magnitude of what happened is something we never really thought we'd see. So yeah, it crashed, So I was a guy that was in the subprime space exclusively. So, 2008 went into like jumping from one sinking ship to another, thinking that we were going to, be okay and see our ways through it. But really, every single subprime company vanished off the planet. Every single one, Joe. There was no safe haven. There was no getting through that. But nobody saw it. It was the tip of the iceberg. Nobody knew how deep it was. I don't even think market analysts knew uh, because people are still pouring money into companies thinking like, oh, hey, these companies are going out of business. They're seeing opportunity and they're hiring people like AEs like myself, bringing us in, paying us this money to join them just for their ship to go down very soon after. So like, I don't think anybody really knew or saw it coming, but yeah, no, we definitely got exposed to a sharp down. Hopefully the biggest that we will see in our careers, but there's been some smaller dips here and there, but nothing to that magnitude.
How have things been for you in a post COVID world? I know we were all riding high 2020, 21, but I
Yeah,
mean, I know for
those are
me
good years.
personally, 2022 was hard for me. It was a deep, like I primarily dealt with first time home buyers. That was my
Yep.
whole niche. And then all of a sudden I had 30 to 40, potential leads, or can't find houses, can't do
Yeah.
anything.
No, for sure.
Were you finding yourself in a similar situation where you had because as a wholesale lender, you're primarily working with brokers. Did you see any dips in that? And did you have to pivot in any situation with that?
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I made a big pivot. And so I think like a lot of LOs, everything was running great. COVID was fantastic for our business. It created a refi boom like none other with interest rates that were just, absurdly low. It's like winning the lottery for people to get that kind of money that cheap to, a rising rate environment, steadily rising rate environment over years. And as you know, as being vested in home buyers and home sales, I mean, was house locked. Nobody wants to sell. Nobody wants to refi. I was like a lot of, I think, originators, assuming that things were going to improve rate wise, and I think I burned a couple of years waiting for that, like just thinking, we always kept thinking, oh, it'll be in the fall. Oh, it's going to be in the spring. And I came to the realization that, you know what, I need to figure out how to make this market work for me now with the way things are, because waiting for rates is, you can't wait. We're literally waiting for something that we all thought very surely was going to happen. And then we all got disappointed several times over because I came to the realization, and maybe I'm a slow learner. It took me a couple of years, but yeah, I wasn't waiting around anymore. So I made a huge pivot, Joe. I was with the company for almost a decade. I decided to switch and go full into the non QM space on the wholesale side. Whereas before I was doing agency and a little bit of non QM lending, but that's where I saw the excitement in the industry. That's where I saw the money. That's where I saw I could make the biggest impact. And so I pivoted. I left the one employer, went to another one, and went full in on the non QM side. And it's worked out tremendously well, better than I thought. So that's always good. But yeah, so I had to make an adjustment to be as successful as I wanted to be, or else I would have still just kind of been sitting around hoping and praying for a refi.
Yeah. Like a lot of us still are. And that does create a great segue to, our next topic, Logan. So what can you tell us about Logan for people who are unaware, what your niche is,
Yeah.
just get a quick overview.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, I mean, listen, to go real far there, Logan has been around for a long time, a lot longer than anybody really knows. But the company sits today as a non QM wholesale lender, it's been about 6 years. Prior to that, Logan was around for a long time, like 30 years. It was just a different type of lender. And the real changeover occurred when Newberger Berman, one of the oldest and largest asset managers in the world, acquired Logan. And that's where the changeover, and they turned Logan into really their non QM arm, for their intake for non QM business because they wanted to be in the space. And that's what Logan is today, and who it was for like the last 6 years. So an exclusively focused non QM lender. We're not doing any agency loans here. We're just all non QM. And the real thing that makes, I think, any bank unique is where the money's coming from, and our money is coming from Newberger, by and large. And that's what makes us unique because we're not a pass through lender that's selling to just the normal market type of secondary lenders out there, investors, I should say. So Newberger is what makes us very unique. Uh, that unique outlet is where our loans, vast majority of our loans are going. So it gives us the ability to be a little different in that. Newberger is a very tempered asset manager. So like they're smart with what they want to do and where they want to be, and they know where they don't want it. And they give us some very aggressive products. They give us some flexibility with these products, uh, making exceptions and stuff like that. And we have a good comfortability making these exceptions because of that close relationship we have with that investor. Whereas we're not just selling it to, some random other investors that are more seen in the industry. It's a special relationship between these two organizations. So yeah, that is the main thing that makes Logan different. And what you're going to see here that you're not going to get with my competitors is that access to these product lines as Newberger has presented and have us execute.
What are some unique products that you guys have that maybe others don't have, or better yet, that you do better than others? Because we've got a lot of people offer a lot of things, but from
Mhm.
my experience, it's just like it's an advertisement. It's an advertisement for something that you might get, but it might be impossible or you're jumping through hoops to get. What do you think is something that you really specialize in, particularly like a program or
Yeah.
whatnot?
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. Like, so everybody's into non-QM lending now. Like, literally every single lender is at least dabbling. So it's not really so much the product; it's how you do the product. The devil is definitely in the details. So the products can vary widely, even though they come with the same name. Like, let's talk about the big one, right? DSCR.
Mhm.
So everybody knows how to do a DSCR loan, and I think understands the concept of it. But the way you do it, it's so we go after a particular space in the non-QM market that we're very aggressive with. So like we're looking for good credit. So we're not looking for, very challenged borrowers, but we're very aggressive when it comes to guidelines. So like I kind of give you the details there. So like we're totally okay with a DSCR loan on a borrower being a first-time investor. We're okay with them getting gift funds for their down payment and the closing costs even. Like all of it can be gifted. So it's pretty aggressive stance to allow someone to do, but we are looking for, good credit scores. We start at a 660 FICO. I would say our sweet spot from a pricing standpoint, though, is higher than that. It's like a 700, 720 credit score is really where us and our owners Uber want to be. But so there's a whole lot of details where I see some other lenders, requiring more reserves. Some other lenders maybe don't want to use cash out for the reserves, where we will. Borrowers status, residency status. We can allow all EAD categories. So I don't care what category your borrower is because we accept them all. So there's a lot of openings in our credit box on the guideline side, which is what makes us a good fit, especially for DSCR lending, which we do a ton of. And listen, I could run off a whole bunch of guidelines, but there's a lot of little ones that we're flexible with that allow us to get the deal done, not just look good up front and have you submit the file. We actually come through to the closing, even if it requires exceptions. So, you're going to get flexibility with us when you bring us a good borrower.
Yeah, and I think some of the basic things that you said, and for any of the loan officers watching, it's a big one because if you're not doing DSCR or doing non-QM or anything like that, you might not know about the first-time investor. You might not know that borrower funds aren't going to be allowed. You might not know this. You might just assume that it's going to be a more flexible version of a conventional, and it's not. Right now, it's a completely different world. I
Right.
learned that the hard way about 3 years ago when I did my first DSCR loan, and we managed to get around it, but still it was a learning experience. And you've got to face the client as the expert. And if you go up against them, and you tell them, hey, this is going to be okay, and it's not, that you lose so much credibility. What do you find like when you're talking to brokers? What's your process for working with new people, educating them? Uh, you know, you know, giving them I mean, everybody has like I have a lot of people who be like, "Oh, check the guidelines, check this." If I were to come to you with a loan, what's your process? Like, "Hey, I've got this, this, and this." Do
Yeah.
you walk it through? What's your return time like on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, it's you always got to kind of assess, your partner and kind of where they're at from a knowledge base and who they are. So try to figure out what I need to do to make this work for both of us. So, when it comes to training, we certainly have a lot of resources here where we will give guidance and I participate in that just, with the technical aspect, how to use the portal, how to access the pricing engine and make it work for you, and then how to follow our process along because every lender is a little different in who's responsible for what and how to work with us. When someone comes to me with a deal, like you mentioned, or a scenario, let's say that they're trying to structure, I don't expect a client to be an expert on my guidelines. That's what I'm here for. Expect them to know about the business and some of the fundamentals, but not the nitty gritty like, do I require a tenant to be in the property or not if it's a debt service, or exactly what my ratio is at what LTV, and all the nitty gritty, and that's where I come in. So I'm hands on. Best thing for them to do, and what I was always encourage them to do is to call me and let's run through the scenario, because a lot of people send an email, right? They give me a FICO, an LTV, a property type, a zip code, and prices for me. I can do that. But that does not mean that that loan is going to be a good fit with my organization or any,
Yeah.
because there's so many other details. Like we gotta kind of just chat about it. Like who owns the property? How long have they owned it? Why are they doing the refi? Is there a tenant in there? Is there not? There's not. Why not? Did they just rehab it? Like, what's the deal? Like the scenario matters. And through a quick conversation, I can figure out kind of what I need to know to make sure it fits what we do here. And that's how we structured it.
Nice. So you work with, obviously as a wholesale lender, you work with a lot of brokers. What would you say? What are some of the habits or some of the, yeah, we'll go with habits. What do you
Okay.
say? Well, what would you say is the top brokers you work with? What do you say is making them the most successful, or what do you see as making them the most successful?
Yeah, so from the parts that I see, I think it's work ethic. It's these guys that are the real money makers are the real driving success stories. Some of them are certainly at AMS, some of them are at other companies. These are people that I think they don't use the flexibility that this job gives to work less time. That flexibility is actually used for them to keep working almost continuously into the evenings from home. So the people that I know that are the absolute most successful, these are guys that are making easy seven figures a year. I'm hearing from them in the evenings. They're still working. Like they don't clock out. It's not a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 3 like people joke around like bankers, like banker hours, and that's not them. Uh, so I don't think it's fancy cars or Ferragamo shoes or custom suits. I just think it's the grind that it's a person that can make 20 grand a month and be like, damn, that sucked. And figure out how to double down and make 40 and then 80 a month and keep working at it. And they just don't stop. So like some people will just make enough money to get by and then they'll stop. Some people just keep going. They have that desire. So I think it's the person and I think it's, are they willing to put in that time to do it?
I I agree with you 100% on that. Even last week, I was spending time with one of our top brokers at AMS, and like the whole time, I'm just like, we're at the office. We go out to grab dinner, nonstop on the phone, dealing,
Hmm.
dealing, dealing, just like
You gotta
weaving
want to
in
do it.
personal and work, and it's just like, well, I know where I went wrong.
You got to want to do it. I don't think it's something you could teach. Really, it's that desire to keep filling up that bank account but never stop. That comes, I think, from within, right? It's like you're giving up your weekends, you're giving up your nights because you just want to keep running.
And a lot of them seem to actually really have a passion for this business too, which
Yes.
is it's a great thing to have. You don't hear a lot of people saying, listen, I have a passion for the mortgage industry. But the ones that actually do and be like, hey, I'm going to take this seriously, this is going to be my life, they are wildly successful.
You don't have a passion for it, you're going to get burned out,
Yeah.
and you're not going to want to just continuously do it and bob it and weave and through the myriad of challenges that face us day in and day out. Because there's nothing cookie cutter about lending today, or maybe ever. But when you look at what we do on the surface, it seems pretty easy. You got a credit score, you got an LTV, a loan amount, but there's so much going on these deals that we touch between entity ownerships and I mean just all kinds of things. That yeah, we have to be problem solvers continuously, and yeah, the passion has to be there.
So I guess that kind of answers my next question, which would
Uh,
have been, what would your advice be to somebody who's looking for long term or wants to build long term success? And that pretty much answered it. Being like continue to educate yourself,
yeah.
continuing to grind, and to have a passion for where you're actually doing. So maybe maybe some more fun questions. I've asked this of other people before. What was the wildest scenario you've ever had to do that you actually succeeded on?
Like we're talking scenario, like
Yeah, like the craziest loan you've ever had to do that you actually got through.
let's see here, wildest transactions. I mean, the things that come to mind most for me right now is it's really pulling off what seemed to be completely impossible from a time perspective. Like, I'm thinking of one big client of mine right now that I've worked with for many years, like 15, 16 years. and we've done a lot of business together and consistently. And they all often put me in a predicament that's damn near impossible to come through, and that's often how he, I guess, propels his business, is like taking in an application that has to close in like 7 days or 8 days, and it takes everything I got and every resource I have to throw at it to get it through to the finish line that quickly. But we do pull it off, and those become very hairy and very challenging because yeah, what we're trying to do is just given where turn times are and all the steps that are needed in the process, it's just not typical, to close a loan in a week with your wholesale lender, from inception. So it's challenging because you got to get buy-in from the company and all my friends inside of my company when they look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them when the loan's closing, and I got to try to keep morale up and keep people motivated and let them know that yeah, this is actually going to happen. But yeah, that's probably the craziest that I I can recall. I mean, other than everybody seems to like to leave the country when they're supposed to buy a house too. I mean,
Yeah.
those get a little crazy. And now I'm thinking more as I'm talking here, remote online notaries with people in other countries. I had a transaction like that not too long ago that I got a little crazy at the end. Turned out we had to, deal with the closing when the guy was away in another country, and getting everybody up to speed on the whole RON, the remote online notary steps, because nobody was versed in it. I don't even think the settlement company was really versed in it, but we all figured it out. It wasn't easy, but we figured it out.
I think that's the key thing over there is just like being able to have somebody in your corner that's going to figure stuff out, that's going to answer the phone, that's going to walk you through this. And, timing too, because you know, again, we're not naming any names, we're safe, but I've worked with so many people that will go off the speed stuff. And I'd rather you tell me, hey, I hear your guideline. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And, I mean, it's just, it's a maybe. But if I'm providing you all the docs and be like, you got this? Do you think underwriting's got this outside of a act of God? If we both agree that this looks good and you can hit those numbers, that's invaluable in this business.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think as a broker, you need to have a good relationship with your account executive and the wholesale companies that you're working with. I think, yeah, you have to pick who you want to kind of get into bed with, and hopefully that person is someone that when things get tough is there helping you hand in hand figuring out the problem at hand, not deferring it to somebody else or saying, well, you need to wait for this, or send that in and we'll see what happens, or even worse, not even answering your phone calls. Just letting it kind of take its path. You need someone that's going to be in the trenches with you, because I assure you, you're going to need to get into the trenches if you're going to be successful in this business. You'll get easy loans, but I think you'll more often have ones that'll have some bumps and challenges to them, and you need to be able to navigate that. And your wholesale lender's not there for you to figure it out, and I don't know how you're gonna do it.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest takeaways from conversations like this is that in this business, it really comes down to relationships, communications, and consistency more than anything else, especially in markets like the we're in today, which who knows what's happening? I stopped guessing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And listen, I'll be honest, I mean, everybody wants rates to get better, but like I said, I made that pivot to make the market work for the way it is, because I can't change the market, but I could change what I do. And I put together a plan, and my plan worked. I put a lot of thought into it.
Now, if there were three things that you wanted to tell brokers as we wrap this up today, three things that you want them to know about you and Logan, or both, what would those be?
I mean, about me, I would say I'm someone that likes to develop long lasting relationships, like the one I mentioned, you know, decade plus relationships. I care a lot about my local market, the surrounding states, tri state area. That's where I've always been. And when I find someone that I believe is a good producer, I'm in it for the long run. I'm not in it just to get the one loan submitted or just try to get an extra loan in that month. I'm looking at it from a long-term relationship, and that's sometimes that means saying that loan shouldn't come to my bank. that's not a good fit versus just trying to throw some crap against the wall and hoping it all works out. So I'm in it for the long run, and I look for people that I think fit that on my end too. So I'd want brokers to know that, and that means when things get challenging, I'm going to go at the extra mile to make sure that you get a good fair shake because I am looking for your next deal and your next deal for years to come. So that's always been my strategy. I try to build deep, long standing relationships versus the guy that's just trying to get one loan from 10,000 companies out there. I'm more looking for deeper penetration. I think it's more efficient and effective. And the people that I do business with year over year are ones that do trust me with big pieces of their pipeline. So that's kind of how I operate. When it comes to Logan, as we said before, Logan is different. It is unique. We are flexible. We make a lot of exceptions. It's that relationship we've had with our investor that allows us to do that. That combined with our guidelines, really allow you to get more loans closed here. It's not always all about price, but we certainly do price aggressively in the buckets that we want to be in and grow in. So, yeah, those are really the things I would want to resonate the most is, the fact that I'm looking to build a long-term relationship with you, my hands-on approach, the fact that I'm going to help you structure your loans and help you navigate through challenges, and Logan, the unique aspects that Logan brings to the table, and they give us a package that allows us from technology, from process and guidelines to get loans closed and get them to the finish line. If you send your loan here, you're gonna get it done unless your loan just doesn't meet the program. You're not gonna have to move it to another lender because we couldn't figure it out, kind of thing. You're gonna get a fair shake here, and you're gonna get a high percentage of your loans done.
That's great to hear. So, Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing
Yeah,
your
you got it.
perspective today. And for those of you at home, if you enjoyed this episode of AMS Spotlight, make sure to follow AMS Mortgage Services for more conversations with leaders across the mortgage and real estate industry. And as always, if you have questions about financing, buying a home, or the market in general, visit AMS Mortgage Services online or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.